Okay, sorry about that. That cut me off. Didn't realize it was going to. So this is what we have right now going on. It's just this emitter spewing out particles straight down. If we look at our emitter, how we have that doing that is it's an omni uh, set with the gravity under the in particle shape 1 turned on, and we did that by where was it at? Under dynamics, I think it was. Sorry, I have everything expanded out here. So yeah, um, under dynamics, we just told it to respond to ignore solver gravity. We unchecked that. So what we want to do now is we want to start seeing these particles interact with this bowl. The way we're going to do that is because this is because the particles are being solved and falling, but with the nucleus dynamics engine, we can create other nucleus objects to catch these things, to interact with these things. So we could create an Ankoff bag, and it could fill up with these particles. Instead, what we're going to do, we're just going to nudge our bowl over a little bit so it'll go into it. I'm going to nudge it completely over. Let's just kind of leave it right there. We're going to turn our bowl into a passive collider. Okay, so if we select our bowl, this means dynamics are not going to affect it. It's not going to fall with gravity. It's just going to allow other dynamic objects to interact with it. And if I animated it, it would do that accordingly. But right now we can just say create passive collider, and now other dynamic objects will collide with that. Now it's under InMesh. So we create passive collider and hit play. And you'll start to see that the bowl fills up with our particles. Now, it's saying it's filling up with our particles, but at the same time it appears to not be filling up. The funny thing about that is there's hundreds of particles in there. They're just all on top of each other. They're not colliding with each other. They're going through each other. And if we're creating something like smoke, then that's what we want. But if we go over to our shading options here and we turn this on to, say, blobby surface, that's not what we want, because it looks like they're all going through each other. They're not piling up, and that's not what, something like this. Well, let's imagine that this is a bowl of cereal. That's not what this would look like. It just keeps adding more and more and more, but they're all just kind of on top of each other, taking up the same space. So what we're going to do is we're going to make these objects self-collide as well. Also, the first thing, just to make it a little more interesting and more serial-like, let's bump this radius up to 0.3. So we can go back. And that's feeling a little bit more like a bowl of Kix or something like that. Now under collision, and again we're still in the end particle shape 1, under collision we're going to turn on self-collide. And when we do that, if we hit play, well, of course they all exploded because they were all on top of each other. But if we go back to 0 and we hit play, you'll start seeing now that they're colliding with each other. Now it's having to do a lot more calculations, so it's a little slower now. But eventually it will start to fill up, and this bowl will fill up with these objects. Now this is how kids pour cereal, because it's all falling out. To make sure we're catching all of them, I'm going to go ahead and move the bowl over. I just thought it looked neat when they were overflowing. So we'll kind of move it over here where it can catch most of them at least. And if a few of them bounce out, then that's fine. But that way we can get the bowl filling up pretty well in about 300 frames or so. And it's starting to overflow in 300 frames. So with about 300 frames, we can fill up a bowl of cereal. So that's looking pretty neat, and of course we can do a lot of things with that if we would like. We could go in there and we can create textures on top of these objects. So we could go down to our particle shapes here. select them. Right now they're going from white to blue, so the color is changing over its lifespan, which doesn't really happen to cereal. I mean, I guess it does over a really long period of time, but we can get rid of that, or we could actually tell it that we want the well, no, I guess that's probably going to be the easiest way. Or we could change color input to constant, but it would still leave you with this gradient here, and so we now we can change this color to whatever we would like. If we want some Kix cereal, yay! Now we got Kix. It's filling up a bowl with, or this could be that peanut butter puff cereal if you want it to be peanut butter puffs. And of course, if you render this, you can see them as little spheres in there. You can also change this texture on these, and let's not get into that. But you can create a material and apply it to these particles if you want to individually texture the particles. You can. What we're going to do now, though, is we're actually going to go back and change these to points. And we do that. Sorry, I know this always gets long and winding list here. It's under the shading node, or under the shading tab. We're just going to change this to points, and that's way less interesting to look at. But if you look at it, you'll actually see that it's still filling up in the same amount. And the reason for that is because we set a radius for these points. So these are still calculating as if they were the size of those little balls, but they're not. They're just individual points. The reason we did that is because we're actually going to replace those little points with objects. To do that, I'm just going to go out here to the side somewhere, and I'm going to create me a torus, because I'm actually not a Kix fan. I'm more of a Cheerios guy. So we're going to make us a little Cheerio, roughly the size of what I believe the the original blobby Kix to be. I think they were about like that. And so now we have us a little bitty Cheerio. I'm sorry, I did that by just going to create a polygon primitive, and that's a torus. In case you ever needed to know that, a donut is a torus. Okay, and we're going to create an instancer. And an instancer is a node that basically replaces a particle with a piece of mesh. We do that by going to mParticle, instancer replacement. Let's go and click on that. Yeah, and since we already had the torus selected, it's using that torus as the instanced object. If you don't have that, then you could actually create, or you can actually select it after you've created the instancer. So we hit OK, and now you'll see that our bowl is filling up with very flat feeling Cheerios. Now, although it's kind of neat, we're filling up our bowl with Cheerios. Yeah, they're all laying in the same orientation. They're not rotating. They're not moving around or anything like that. And that's kind of something that we need to deal with, because that doesn't look real. Cereal doesn't fall into line very neat like that. So now, if we go in here and we select our particle, we'll see that we have, we're still rendering as points. We'll see if we go down here, we have a new, no, it's not a new tab, but under this tab called Instancer Geometry Replacement, now this is all filled in. And if we would have looked at it before we created the instancer, it would have been grayed out and we couldn't use it. We're using instancer 1. It automatically fills that in because we only have one instancer in the scene. If we had more than one, we could choose. And it's showing that basically it's aligning the position of these instanced objects with the world position of the particles. And to make this rotation look not as bad, we're going to tell it to align the rotation of the object with the ramp position, and we're going to change the aim direction to world position. And now this isn't going to look perfect, but on the limited time budget we have, it's about as good as we're going to get. The reason it's not looking perfect is because despite everything, they're all coming out of the box in this perfect shape. that's a little harder to solve and not really necessary just to get this point across. To do that though, you would want to get a little bit of probably like some turbulence or something at the very beginning of this to get some initial rotation or something. Don't worry about that because this is actually not going to be a major project. More than anything, this is just to show you that particles don't have to be used for these ethereal looking effects. Particles can be used for lots of things. Particles can be used for, you know, snow and rain and hail and falling bananas from the sky or whatever you want it to be. If you have a whole bunch of balloons in a room, you could use particles for that. So this is a way to kind of just realize that, you know, that's what particles are. And of course from here you could go on to texture these and light these and render them however you want to. Feel free to do that if you want to, but this is not part of an assignment. This is really just to explain additional particle usages. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then we're going to delve very quickly into hair and fur. Okay, so I'll be right back. Okay, the last thing we're going to do, and we're just going to discuss this briefly because this is actually a larger topic, and we'll get into this some more in class. But we're going to actually talk about the two different things that allow you to create hair and fur, things that are, you know, very high in numbers and render in odd and complex ways. So there's actually two options for this in Maya. Actually, hold on one second here. Sorry about that. If you get any little messages popping up, it's another student from it's a student from a different school I've been talking to for a while. So, so if we go in here and look, all I've really done is I've created two kind of soft-edged boxes. I just created a box, upped the resolution, and smoothed it, so it's not a big deal there. Under Dynamics, you're going to see that we have a an option under here called Hair. We're going to just select one of these boxes and say Create Hair. Isn't that nice? So now if we hit play, let's extend our time range out to something long, 400. We hit play and let it all kind of droop down. Okay, so this is hair. It reacts, and if we select hair and go into the attributes, you can see that there's a lot of options we can have in here between the hair shape, which is this initial form, and then as well as the hair system, like how the hair simulates. So we can have it, you know, fewer hairs per comp, more hairs per comp. We can have thinning areas to where the hair isn't the same length all the way around. Lots of options in here. Some of the things also we can do with the dynamics is we can have it flex or not flex as much. There's a lot of different things we can play around with here to get these dynamic effects of this hair falling. And if we render, we'll see that it is not a very nice looking render. The alternative to hair is fur, and the only real place you're going to find fur is in the Fur tab. So just to show you the alternative to that, if we select this other cube and create a fur on it, it will automatically do some stuff. And if we render that, you'll see the result is much nicer, but is not dynamic. So we'll talk more about this in class tomorrow, and how to kind of experiment around with this and get different effects. So I'll close off with a render there so you can kind of see the differences. Play around with this and play around with the different fur presets that you have up here. So hope that helps. Talk to you soon.